Capital punishment is legal in Afghanistan and can be carried out secretly or publicly due to the current governmental system. The main methods of execution employed by the Afghan government on convicts are hangings and shootings. Stoning, amputation, and flogging are also sometimes used as a method for punishment, and were especially prominent during the late 1990s. Public executions have existed throughout Afghanistan's history. The former Afghan government took important steps away from the use of the death penalty, but they have continued with the Taliban returning to power in August 2021. Some executions have been recently condemned by the United Nations. UN experts have called on Afghan authorities to halt immediately all forms of tortuous, cruel, and degrading forms of punishments. The capital offenses in Afghanistan include a range of crimes from murder to adultery, and are governed by Sharia, along with civil laws. The latest incident comes amid growing international concern over the use of capital punishment in the country since 2021, when the Taliban swept back into power 20 years on from the Allied invasion that ended their rule, in the wake of the 11th of September terrorist attacks in the United States. Since the Taliban takeover of August 2021, the de facto authorities have reintroduced public executions, floggings and other forms of corporal punishment, despite international appeals to uphold human rights standards. The latest execution, which took place in ZARDAD'S, Paktia province, represents a clear violation of human rights and demonstrates an alarming pattern of public punishments. An Afghan serial killer, Abdullah Shah, born in 1965. Abdullah Shah served under Zardad Khan, even earning the nickname ZARDAD'S dog, who served under Gulbuddin Hekmatyar in the civil war in Afghanistan. Overall, the Afghan Civil War of 1992 to 1996 was a period of intense conflict and suffering for the people of Afghanistan. The collapse of the Soviet-backed government, ethnic and religious divisions, and external involvement all contributed to the conflict. The legacy of this period of Afghan history continues to shape the country's politics and society today. The 1992 to 1996 Afghan Civil War, also known as the Second Afghan Civil War, took place between the 28th of April 1992, the date a new interim Afghan government was supposed to replace the Republic of Afghanistan of President Mohammad Najibullah, and the Taliban's occupation of Kabul, establishing the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan on the 27th of September 1996. The war immediately followed the 1989 to 1992 civil war, with the Mujahideen victory and dissolution of the Republic of Afghanistan in April 1992. The Hezb-e-Islami Gulbuddin, led by Gulbuddin Hekmatyar and supported by Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence, refused to form a coalition government and tried to seize Kabul with the help of Caucasus. On the 25th of April 1992, fighting broke out between 3, and later 5 or 6, Mujahideen armies. Alliances between the combatants were transitory throughout the war. The Taliban, a new militia formed with support from Pakistan and ISI, became dominant in 1995 to 96. It captured Kandahar in late 1994. Herat in 1995, Jalalabad in early September 1996, and Kabul by late September 1996. The Taliban fought the newly formed Northern Alliance in the subsequent 1996 to 2001 civil war. A widely publicized allegation regarding Zardad was that one of his militiamen, Abdullah Shah, viciously bit prisoners and had even eaten at least one victim's testicles. Shah was described as a human dog and kept in a cave with a chain around his neck by Zardad, and brought out to intimidate captured travelers. Zardad Khan and Commander Zardad is an Afghan former warlord and Mujahideen leader. In 2005, he was convicted in the United Kingdom, where he was living, for conspiring to take hostages and conspiring to torture during the 1990s in Afghanistan. Abdullah Shah was first convicted in special court proceedings in October 2002. 9 people testified against him at the trial, including another wife he tried to set on fire. The bodies of many of Shah's victims were found in a well in Piman district. On the 20th of April 2004, Abdullah Shah was executed. The execution took place in the Policharki jail. Interim President Hamid Karzai signed the death warrant. At the execution, Abdullah Shah was shot in the back of the head. Witnesses present included representatives of the Afghan police, the Attorney General's office and doctors. Amnesty International protested against the execution, claiming Afghanistan avoided basic standards of fairness. The organization added that Shah was probably silenced so he could not testify against commanders allied to the government. It said he was not provided with a defense attorney, the trial was secret, a confession was obtained under torture, and the first judge in his case was dismissed for taking a bribe. The second judge came under pressure from the Supreme Court to impose the sentence. The people of Afghanistan experienced worsening levels of human rights violations under the de facto Taliban authorities. Women and girls faced the crime against humanity of gender persecution and were increasingly deprived of their rights to freedom of movement and freedom of expression. Access to healthcare remained difficult, and education for women and girls beyond primary school remained banned. The Shah Hazara community continued to face targeted attacks and killings, primarily by the Islamic State of Khorasan province. The Taliban continued to marginalize women as well as ethnic and religious groups from political participation, access to public services and humanitarian assistance. The Taliban continued to carry out public executions of individuals who had been sentenced to death by their courts, despite serious concerns regarding compliance with fair trial rights. 3 men were publicly executed in February and 1 man in November. In July, reports further indicated that between 300 and 600 prisoners were sentenced to death by the Taliban courts. In March, media reported that the Taliban may resume stoning to death as punishment for adultery. Thank you for watching Death Row.